Hello, I'm Marlon Vandermeer, but you might know me as the Bagfather. As the name suggests, I know a thing or two about baggage. In fact, I'm passionate about making baggage transfer around the world more seamless.
And I'm Jen Zumba, currently working for a company which provides innovative engineering and design services through digital transformation and sustainable systems. In this series, we'll be talking to everyone involved in aviation about getting your possessions around the world safely.
After all, how often have you stood at the airport carousel with that familiar sense of anxiety, hoping your baggage has made the same journey as you, and in one piece? If you ever lost your bag while flying somewhere, you'll know how frustrating it is.
From finding the best suitcase to what happens when your bag goes missing, automation, insurance, regulation, and the incredible journey your bags go through when they disappear on that little conveyor belt at check-in, and everywhere in between.
Worldwide, baggage is one of the most important issues in aviation, from the way we track and identify baggage to weight and claims.
This episode is sponsored by Sky Chatters, the one and only international community of global citizens. So Marlon, firstly, why the name, and how did you start to become interested in bags?
Why the name? I had a little career in baggage, where I was the founder of a startup. And when I left earlier in 2023, some of the airlines people came to me, one specifically said, "You're the one and only Bagfather." And I found it a nice nickname that was given to me, but he was obviously referring to the name I share with Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando.
And if I'm listening to it now, the Bagfather, and we were talking about making this podcast, I'm very proud that this name was given to the podcast. And what's your interest in this area, Jen?
So I've been working in aviation for over 30 years. I started my career working for a label manufacturer. From that, I was selling baggage tags and boarding passes to airlines and airports. And just within the last few years, I made the change over to the professional services side, working for a company that provides design services. But amongst other things, we also focus on the sustainability aspects, the innovation, any of the technology that can be infused to make it a better experience for the airports, for the airlines, for the traveling public. So there's a lot of pieces of it that are very interesting to me. Also, a lot of pieces that are very frustrating to me.
I totally got that. That's frustration.
Yeah. How did you become interested in bags, and why this podcast?
I think there is a lot of education to do to passengers, but there's also a lot that can be improved. And all the initiatives around the world that are being taken by all the airlines and some airports, we are having one big problem here. Yeah?
Pretty far behind in technology.
We are not only far behind in technology, but also we will be short in labor. Recently, I saw this list of airlines and airports who are doing well. And it were all airports in Asia, and they had no shortage in labor. And where we saw that the human factor became a problem, you see baggage becomes a problem. And let's look at 2022, when things got really awkward. We had a true baggage crisis. But it basically gave it away that how far behind we are. And once baggage becomes a problem, it becomes a real problem.
It's a big problem, and we don't have that type of influx of people in the United States or the UK, other areas outside of Asia, to just throw bodies at it to make it better.
Yeah, that's difficult. We have the same in Europe. And what you see, that it's not a job that people want to do in baggage. So that's why all the airlines and airports are investing in robotized loading, robotized unloading, very expensive baggage handling systems on airports. Passengers should know what's going on behind the scenes.
Particularly when they pay fees to have their bags fly.
On Schiphol, they did a good job. They have this glass plate. You can see your bags. But in the end, there is no trust. People do not trust airlines to check in their bags. That complete atmosphere changed.
But you can get a message now that tells you exactly where your bag is, right?
By what? A notification? I was recently on a trip. I got a notification that my bag was in Amsterdam, but it was not. I was still in Detroit, and my bag was still in Detroit. But luckily, the notification system said, well, hey, your bag finally made it. And I have to confess, I'm using AirTags. In every bag I'm traveling with, I'm using AirTags.
But I've heard the horror stories of that also, people that do use AirTags and then they go to the airport and say, I know my bag is here, but they still can't get the help to find where their bag actually is. They want to go behind the counter and find their bags.
Actually, it's even more funny that some people expect customer service employees to go and get their bag because I can see it is over there with the other 8,000 bags that are standing there. But that's a problem. People know more about bags than the employees or the airline knows. So the whereabouts of the bag, that becomes a problem in itself.
I care about my bag probably more than one agent cares about one bag in a sea of 8,000, right?
In essence, what we are facing is that baggage handling and the fundamentals of baggage handling did not change in the last 30 years.
Well, and bags are such a critical part of the whole process, yet it is one of the last things that has been addressed by the industry.
Why is that?
I don't know why that is. I mean, think about the people who are traveling and the things that they might be going to. Not everybody's off to go on a cruise and they just have to live with one change of clothing until they can hit a store. Some people are going to see family because someone's passed away. They're in horrible situations. And when baggage is lost, it is a big deal.
It is a big deal, and it depends on what the contents are. But I've seen a lot of baggage graveyards in my career, resort where all the orphan bags comes together, and where the airlines actually do a good job in trying to return the bag. But the thing is, you see people struggling with how they deal with bags. My sister, for example, she travels once a year. Every year I need to explain to her how things work. And while all the hard work at the airport and at the airline, it's not that simple as bringing a bag from A to B. It's what they should do, and it's what they promise, and that's why you pay a bag fee. But exactly, the complexity about the technology, it's amazing.
So as passengers, are there things that we should be doing that would help move our bags or make them more reconcilable with us once they've found a bag?
Yeah, that's one thing. But at least in this podcast, we can educate people and we can basically hold the airlines in a very positive way accountable for delivering good service. Because if you ask an airline executive, most of the time they're talking about the passenger journey and the passenger experience. But the bag and the passenger make a different journey. And when they screw up in the bag journey, then most of the time the passenger journey is not so well. And over the last 20, 25 years, they invested at the airports in pretty expensive baggage handling system, backdrop systems, everything. But still, we are dealing with a 97, 98% success rate. That means the 2% in absolute numbers, that's a lot of bags and a lot of very disappointed passengers.
Absolutely. Now, you referenced airlines before, but the truth of the matter is there's airlines, there's airports, there's ground handling services. So it's more than just holding your airline responsible for moving your baggage. There's a lot of people involved in that.
And what I hear a lot in our industry is that Amazon can do it. Amazon can bring a package from A to B very easily.
I can watch the tracking the whole time and know.
Yeah, I can do that when I order a pizza. From the moment it goes into the oven to the moment that I receive my pizza at home. And Amazon does a very good job, of course. But I think one of the biggest problems we see in this industry, that the industry is so fragmented. It's so silent. People are not sharing data. They all think they own the customer. They all think they own the baggage data. But in the end, tell me which airline is really, really pushing for this passenger-first approach. And it's not only the airlines, it's not the airports, it's not the ground handlers. It are also the TSAs of this world. All the authorities, I think they have a pretty big challenge ahead with new technologies and expectations for next generations. It is the whole ecosystem. And I also think people are getting more tech savvy. They are getting more informed. So they expect a better performance. And we are behind that. And we didn't invest in it. And of course, I know you're a big fan of RFID and they're pushing that for the last 20 years. But that's not the solution.
Do you think the right technology is out there now?
I personally think there's a combination of technologies that needs to be done, but at least we need to start collaborate. And you see a good collaboration between airline alliances. I know within the Star Alliance, they do a lot of great stuff, but true collaboration with, for example, my topic, of course, is AI. I'm huge for doing a lot of work in the AI scene. People want to travel. It's that simple. But they are scared of checking in their bags. They still are, because we are delivering, as an industry, not a good product. The baggage product sucks.
So how often do you check your bag?
Good question. I do check my bag, especially when I go to the States for longer than a week. But I do take a picture when I'm putting it on the backdrop. I take good care of my baggage receive. I have my AirTag in it. So I do everything to make it happen.
So do you take a picture of the contents inside and have all of your receipts ready to go in case it's lost?
Yeah, that's another story. I don't do that, but I do keep track of a list of what I'm putting in the bag. And it's in all my travel lists, most of the time it's practically the same. But I know this is one of the things that the airlines are still dealing with. Yeah, give me the receipts of your underwear that you're already using for the last 10 years. That's not working.
Opens up a whole nother can of worms.
And do you check your bag?
Usually if I'm gone up to 5 days, I'll check my bag. Anything beyond that, I need extra shoes, and then I'll check.
I actually think there is a lot to win there as well, being more responsible with what you take. But again, traveling, you need your stuff. If you're going on a cruise, you need your stuff. And it's very inconvenient if it's not there.
And it depends on the time of year also. Sometimes I'm heading to Florida for a few days and then heading up to Denver, two completely different climates, so requiring completely different sets of clothing, which doesn't help me get everything into one carry-on either.
We are making this podcast also for passengers. I've heard a lot of horror stories, and I got a lot of emails in my inbox already about people that wanted to share their horror stories and their baggage drama on this. You ever lost your bag, or did it become very uncomfortable for you?
I've had my bag separated from me where they've had to deliver to my home. So it was on the end of my trip. Wasn't that big of a deal. The one time that I'll say I was quite displeased, I had a layover. That flight got canceled. Had to stay the night in a city, but they flew my bag home. So I had to stay the night with no makeup, no change of clothes.
Oh, no makeup.
No, that's scary all by itself. So when I talked to the agent about it and I said, so you're making me stay the night here, but I have access to none of my additional clothing, any of my toothbrush. She said, well, just because you can't fly doesn't mean your bags don't have room to fly. So they've told me that it's more important to fix their scenarios than to worry about my scenario. That was aggravating to me.
Again, the passenger experience is so important.
Well,
how did you cope with that? No makeup.
It's what everybody else had to cope with around me. Not me. I just didn't look in the mirror.
Obviously, I don't have that problem, but yeah, but I do have a story about my wife. We went on a city trip to Lisbon from Amsterdam with her brother, mentally disabled, and her mom. She's in her mid-60s. It was just 2 days. But they did check in a bag because they need to bring all kinds of stuff for my brother as well. And what happened was at arrival, the bag was completely crushed. It was teared apart. It was just impressive. So my wife called me. I was still in Amsterdam. And she said, well, she was almost on the top of crying. And she said, what do I need to do? You're good with baggage. What do I need to do? So you need to go to this desk, get a PIR form, which stands for Property Irregularity Report, because then you will be compensated, you get a new bag, etc. So she couldn't use that bag anymore because it was so heavily damaged. Now, long story short, she came to the desk and the guy just said to her, listen, that was your own risk. Not willing to help her at all. He had a hard day in his career because my wife immediately called me. I had him on FaceTime and I stayed calm. I said, well, you need to confirm that to me, write it down, make sure that you are not willing to make a PIR form. And it was a ground handler, I have to say that. It was hired by an airline. But it was a low-cost carrier, and you could see that they didn't care at all. So she took her stuff, put it all in plastic bags, and didn't use the bag. But then they sent a link to order a new bag, and it would be delivered to your hotel, which is, in theory, a good service. It was a dead-end street, so she couldn't order anything. So I pooped this guy's balloon, and I told him, I said, well, this is the wrong person to mess with. And I'm not too proud of it, but I will not be a nice person in a conversation. But I think this is a good example on how the airlines mess up themselves, and it doesn't become a good product. Somewhere in the chain, it goes wrong. And this is something that reminds me a lot. And luckily, I know this airline very well, so I reached out, and I don't think the problem will happen again. I'm not sure what this gentleman is doing now for work, but obviously not with an airline. But they just try it. And that's the kind of reputation airlines are building themselves now when it comes to baggage. And that's also why people dislike checking a bag. That's why we see in all the statistics now that people take more carry-on. There's more confusion in the plane. Boarding takes a little bit longer because capacity is met. If you see some of the trolleys they take in.
Well, yeah.
Oh, you're the one.
I am not the one. No, but, you think people are happy because they're not checking a bag, but that's not the case either because they have just as many complaints once they get on board and they're angry that they have a backpack and it can fit under their seat. So they're expected to put it under their seat. Might be the only piece that they carried on. So they feel entitled to space up above. So that starts a whole nother conversation.
And especially in your role, I was thinking, you know a lot about airports. And if I go to many airports, I always look how much space of an airport is being used for baggage. It already starts with the curbside, with where the carts needs to be for the bags, then your drop-off locations, then you need to go to your self-tagging stations, and so on. And then we are talking about the baggage handling system, the reclaim carousels. If you look at an average airport, they're making so much investments in proper baggage handling, but I still think it was already outdated in the 80s. Why can't they bring my bag to the parking lot?
Yeah, that's a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
Why can't they?
But still all standing together near a baggage carousel, and I don't see it. They make so much investment.
It's still the same process. It's still, everything's still the same, maybe just with different equipment utilized.
Yeah, and I personally think when we are still delivering 97% of all bags and 3% won't make it, we are doing something fundamentally wrong in this industry.
Yeah.
But I see it as a challenge to regain the trust of passengers so they check in their bags again and make sure that this bag product is really a good product.
Yeah.
You're working in those airports. How much money do they even spend on baggage handling systems?
Millions. Yeah. It's millions of dollars to replace a baggage system.
Yeah, I get that. But in Schiphol, I know that system, all the conveyor belts they have and all the cost so much money even to operate it on a daily basis.
Yeah, then you have capital investment and the costs of operations. It is a huge investment.
And still, we need a human being bringing the bag to the plane. We have this little belt loader, this little snake that goes into the plane. Containerized baggage. On Schiphol, we have robots to load the containers. I think even the baggage carts that you see around the planes. What kind of innovation do we see there? What is to be expected in the next 10 years from now?
Now, they started doing some trialing on autonomous vehicles to do that job, right?
Yeah, I've seen some, but they're all initiatives and they're all trying to reinvent the wheel. Every airport is trying to do its own thing.
Well, and we've kind of talked about some of that also. Everybody's trying to get to the same place, but nobody's working together to get there. Everybody wants to incubate their own ideas, even though it is maybe the same idea as 2 or 3 other airlines, airports, but they're not sharing that information all the time.
Yeah, that's funny, yeah. And you see a lot of standalone innovations, airports being very proud of what they do. And I encourage that they do that kind of innovations. But in the end, collaboration is, I think, more important than the innovation here.
Yeah, I agree. If there's ever going to be worldwide solutions, it has to be that way.
So let's talk a little bit about your own travel behavior. How often do you travel?
I'm probably on the road 2 to 3 weeks of a month. So probably about 70% of my life is travel.
Okay, so they still know you at home?
Sometimes when they need money.
Okay.
Yeah, they know me pretty well then.
You're from Chicago, so I'm assuming you're using United.
I am using United, yes.
Okay.
I'm spoiled because I can get from point A to point B with no stopovers pretty much anywhere I need to go in the world. So it'll be hard for me to defect from United.
I got that. I'm from Amsterdam. It's almost logical to use KLM and to some extent Delta Airlines. Bring me all over the world. But sometimes I travel through London or through Frankfurt.
Yeah.
I'm happy that Amsterdam is still the hub that it is.
So how many of your flights do you have to stop over someplace else? Is it pretty much direct flights everywhere you go?
Yeah, I fly most of the time directly to, if it's within Europe, I can go to my destinations directly. But if I fly to the US, I fly a lot to Canada and the US. It's also directly. So Vancouver, Toronto, that's most of the time directly.
Which generally helps our baggage because it's usually when you're on connections is the biggest time that there are baggage mishaps.
Transferring baggage, I think, is the number one reason why bags don't make it. So it depends on where you want to go. If you're going to very remote destination and there's just one little misstep in the sortation system or whatever, then it all goes wrong. And then it's Murphy's Law. Then everything goes wrong.
There's one time I got to the airport less than an hour before my flight, and I had to rebook my flight because I had a bag to check. They wouldn't allow me to just throw the bag in and make my flight. But I find it funny that if there are irregular operations, they can send my bag separate from me, but not when it's for my benefit, only when it's for their benefit.
Most of the time, if it doesn't, due to security regulations, It didn't work. That's the perfect hiding place for improper performance from the airline.
That really is a big part of it, especially in the States and the regulations that we have to work around.
And it can be really bad if you're separated from your bag.
Yeah.
We have learned that the hard way. Messages were flowing into the inbox of the Bagfather.
I can't wait to read all of those.
You have to go to X right now and just do a hashtag lost bags or a hashtag with one airline, even your favorite airline, United, even KLM. You had so many requests, so many complaints, always in combination with a screenshot. My AirTag, I can see it, it's over there. But sometimes it's just entertaining.
Yeah, you can't believe how bad they've screwed it up.
But what do airlines have to do to regain that trust from those passengers?
It is going to be a timeline that they have to build some confidence again.
You are doing this for the last 30 years, so you had your chances to do this better. But let's give an advice to the airlines. General advice. What do you think needs to happen to regain passengers' trust?
Well, I think, first of all, there has to be a way to share data better between the airlines and airports. I think that would go a long way. Just having access to the data and the ability to utilize that information to make better decisions, not just for baggage, but for operations in general. I think they need to prove out technology that they can utilize and give that some time to prove that out so that we have some confidence in checking our bags again and knowing that it's going to be there waiting for us when we get to our destination.
But one of the things you're mentioning now is the tag, but also labor. We know that that will be a challenge in the next few years. Labor is not that available anymore.
But it's two-sided also. So if you're talking about technologies that are going to reduce the need for workers, a lot of the bag folks are in unions. So those are sensitive conversations also, because if we're talking about equipment that can replace humans, that's not a great conversation to have. You're never going to get that through the unions that are in the States, at least.
Repetitive tasks. I know that, for example, the biggest airport in the world, Atlanta, they have this agreement with the unions that at minimum 100,000 people needs to be employed, including baggage people. But they don't have the people. That's the big problem.
Right. They don't have the people, and we can talk about repurposing people instead of replacing people.
Yeah, and you saw in a certain moment that pilots are helping to load the bags into the aircraft to make their slots. Otherwise, they are stuck on there and they cannot do their own job. We saw Icelandic Air bringing their own baggage people in the plane to make sure it happened at arrival, that bags were unloaded and loaded. So there are a lot of workarounds to get the job done. Yeah. But I think we need to have a fundamental change in how we deal with baggage, how we approach this. But we are dealing with so many legacy systems. We are still dealing with barcodes and labels, and it's not a digitized journey at all. And that's something that we need to be very aware of. This is changing. And if you go on X and all the emails we got, all the horror stories that come in, what I would like to do in this podcast as well is just take a few of those stories and reach out to the airline. They might have a very solid story why it did go wrong and what they do to prevent it in the future. But let's have that conversation. Let's engage with those unfortunate passengers and unfortunate airlines that were not successful in delivering a good service. So what I would like to do is reach out to us, get in touch with the Bagfather.
Yeah, give us a call. Tell us a story. Let us know what happened and what they did to make good on their errors. I would love to hear all those.
The other thing is, I see so many initiatives from airlines. There's literally a lot of innovation going on. We need to engage with those airlines as well. They need to have a podium or a stage to tell us what you're doing. That will help get more confidence from the passengers, so they check in their bags anyhow.
Well, and both sides right now really don't have a voice. You're filling out a document to say you've lost my bag or you've damaged my bag.
And you go to an archaic website and fill in a code and say, oh, you can follow my bag and we let you know when the bag is returned. But you're lucky. I know Southwest and I know United and Air Canada, they all have this fantastic notifiers on bags. Where's my bag? I'm pretty impressed by that. It's a good step forward, I guess.
Yeah, mine has not lied to me yet.
I've tried it on United and I've tried it on Southwest, and it's been pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
And not hidden away. We can learn something from this in Europe.
Yeah, and sometimes I'm at an airport, O'Hare, where I fly out of most often. It takes a while to get bags. It's a huge airport, so it takes a while to get bags back to the claim. And I will say that there is, a feeling of concern when you're standing there for 20 minutes and you haven't seen your bag come through yet. Be able to check my app and know that it's been delivered and it's on its way. It's like, okay, I can wait 10 or 15 more minutes. I know that it's coming. coming. That's really all I need to know at this point.
Personally, I'm the same. I need to know it's coming. I need to know that the service is good, but I don't necessarily need to have the in-between notifications. It's just a matter of keep me calm. I think that's how they approach it. I know IATA did some research on it, and they know people like to be informed. So it's the famous IATA 753 rule.
Well, I think a chain of custody is helpful if 753 really doesn't address that fully, but there's at least scan points so that we can determine where your bag is.
Or a reference point on how the bag was checked in. I was recently at a conference for fraud and claims, and passengers also have bad intentions in reclaiming, and airlines becoming sitting ducks on how to reclaim money or get compensation. That's even another story. But yeah, I described it during that event as a jewelry store that is without security. It's just there for the taking. I personally think it's immorally not right to do it like that.
The airlines and airports have to address that also, because they can't just come up with a technology that solves their issues. They also have to take into consideration there's bad actors and there's people that are going to take advantage of situations.
So there is so much to talk about if we have to talk about baggage. We are now in this 15-minute chat already, and there's so much to talk about, so many aspects. Right. We are talking about baggage drop-offs. We're talking about the airports. We're talking about the ground handlers, all the technology involved from A to C, the whole journey. It's fascinating if you look at every single aspect. One of the things is security. I was recently in Arlington at the TSA headquarters, and they gave me a tour through their museum. What people try to take, it's unbelievable. What they try to get on board, it's just hard. If I would tell, you won't believe me. But it's not only weapons and knives and that kind of the craziest stuff they try to bring on board. We should address an episode on security, on how people deal with that, because there's a lot of fascinating technology going on there as well. And that's one of the reasons why it's so complex. I think security and all the status that we need to take, maybe we can get somebody from the TSA on the podcast. That would be awesome. We always are annoyed when we are screened and we need to take off our shoes and our belt and whatever. But I think passengers will be very, very happy if they know what kind of security measures are really necessary, what people take with them.
Well, particularly after 9/11, I know that it's frustrating to go through a line and have to take off belts and shoes and whatnot, but I would rather go through all of that than be insecure in my flight and wonder who's boarded with what.
That really was a fascinating chat, Jan. Thank you.
Well, in future episodes, we'll ask the big airlines just how technology will make an important positive impact and find out about initiatives for cleaner aviation.
And we also tell stories you won't believe about airlines.
Remember, we would love to hear from you. Get in touch with us via the email on the show page.
Click to follow the Bagfather, wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss out on an episode.
This is a Fresh Air production brought to you by Baggage Media.